Ladies and gentlemen, the ceremony will start for a moment. Please take the seats.
Szanowni Państwo, raz jeszcze bardzo uprzejmie proszę Państwa o zajmowanie miejsc.
Ladies and gentlemen, we ask you again, and please take the seat because our ceremony will start for a moment. Please take your seats.
Szanowni Państwo, uprzejmie prosimy spełnić naszą prośbę. Prosimy o zajęcie miejsc. Szanowni Państwo, raz jeszcze uprzejmie prosimy Państwa o zajmowanie miejsc. Uprzejmie prosimy Państwa o spełnienie naszej prośby i zajęcie miejsc. Szanowni Państwo, już za 10 minut rozpoczniemy naszą uroczystość.
Panie Herzog. Panie Herzog. Panie Herzog. Panie Herzog. Panie Herzog. Pania, chodź. Pania, chodź co? Pania, chodź.
Szanowni Państwo, już za chwilę prezydent Rzeczypospolitej Polskiej wspólnie z prezydentem państwa Izrael i prezydentem Federalnym Republiki Federalnej Niemiec przybędą na plac bohaterów getta warszawskiego.
chodź. Na ramię, chodź. Prezentuj, chodź. Na lewo, chodź.
Panie prezydencie, dowódca garnizonu Warszawa generał brygady Dominikowski melduje wojskową asystę honorową do uroczystości.
Szanowni Państwo, naszą uroczystość rozpocznie odegranie i odśpiewanie hymnu Rzeczypospolitej Polskiej.
Panie, chodź. Na prawo, chodź.
Warszawa!
Panie, chodź.
Bardzo proszę o zajęcie miejsc. Szanowni Państwo, mam zaszczyt powitać Państwa na uroczystych obchodach 80. rocznicy wybuchu powstania w getcie warszawskim. W sposób szczególny pragnę powitać ocalałych z zagłady, a także Polaków ratujących Żydów pod okupacją niemiecką, sprawiedliwych wśród narodów świata. Mam zaszczyt powitać prezydentów, pierwsze damy, najwyższe władze Rzeczypospolitej na czele z marszałkami Sejmu i Senatu, prezesem Rady Ministrów i członkami Rady Ministrów, przewodniczących wszystkich delegacji państwowych, przedstawicieli kadry dowódczej Wojska Polskiego, przedstawicieli Parlamentu Rzeczypospolitej oraz parlamentarzystów z Europy i świata. Witam reprezentantów korpusu dyplomatycznego, reprezentantów kościołów i wspólnot religijnych, w tym wspólnot i gmin żydowskich z Polski i całego świata. Witam przedstawicieli władzy sądowniczej, władz centralnych i samorządowych. Witam reprezentantów wszystkich instytucji i organizacji, mieszkańców Warszawy i wszystkich gości przybyłych na dzisiejszą uroczystość. O zabranie głosu proszę ocalałego z zagłady, świadka Holokaustu, prezydenta Międzynarodowego Komitetu Oświęcimskiego, przewodniczącego Rady Muzeum Polin, pana Mariana Turskiego.
Trzymając w ręku łom czy żerdź, prosimy Cię, Boże, o walkę krwawą. Błagamy o gwałtowną śmierć. Niech nasze oczy przed skonaniem nie widzą, jak się wloką szyny, ale daj dłoniom celność, Panie, aby się skrwawił mundur siny. To wiosna nasza, to kontratak. Tak właśnie kontratak nazwał swój poemat Władysław Szlęgiel, polski poeta, Żyd uwięziony w warszawskim getcie. Zacytowałem tylko kilka linijek. Poemat został napisany przed wybuchem powstania w kwietniu 1943 roku. Sam poeta Władysław Szlęgiel początek powstania przeżył w bunkrze. Niedaleko stąd, 2 przecznice stąd, przy ulicy Świętojerskiej. Wyciągnięty z bunkra 8 maja został zamordowany przez Niemców. Nasza cywilizacja przyzwoiła sobie kilkanaście symboli oporu i bohaterstwa. Mam prawo powiedzieć, że przed 80 laty powstańcy z getta przekształcili otaczające tu nas ulice, Gęsią, Miłą, Niską, Muranowską, w żydowskie Termopile. Powtórzyli żydowską Masadę, żydowskie Westerplatte. Szanowni zgromadzeni, spotykamy się tutaj dzisiaj przed pomnikiem, którego twórcą jest absolwent Warszawskiej Akademii Sztuk Pięknych, Nathan Rapoport. Zebraliśmy się, tak sądzę, z 3 powodów. Pierwszy powód, aby wyrazić podziw i hołd mieszkańcom getta za ich bohaterstwo, determinację, cierpienia, męczeństwo. Przypatrzcie się Państwo temu pomnikowi. Co widzimy z tej strony właśnie? Widzimy postaci bojowników z nożem, z granatem, z karabinem, ale potem, bardzo Was proszę, będziecie mogli obejrzeć drugą stronę tego pomnika. Jego odwrotną stronę to jest pochód cywilów. Tych, którzy do końca nie chcieli oddalić się od swoich najbliższych, od bezbronnych starców i kobiet. To są dwa oblicza tego samego cierpienia i bohaterstwa. Hołd składamy dzisiaj organizatorom oporu. Symbolizują ich nazwiska: Mordechaja Anielewicza, żydowskiej organizacji bojowej, Pawła Frękla, żydowskiego związku wojskowego. Nikogo już z bojowników nie ma na świecie. Ale są jeszcze, choć bardzo nieliczne osoby, można policzyć na palcach. Takich ludzi, którzy żyli w powstańczej Warszawie. Przeważnie są to ci, którzy wówczas byli dziećmi. Taką była Hena Kuczek. Jest tutaj gdzieś. A jest tutaj Hena Kuczek. Jest tutaj między nami. Wówczas 11-letnia dziewczynka. Jej dwaj starsi bracia trafili dużo wcześniej na Umschlagplatz. Też dwie przecznice stąd, w tym kierunku. Zanim wywiezieni zostali do komory gazowej, tacy jak oni przeżywali kilka dni niesamowitej udręki i upokorzenia. Doznawali ich od Niemców i od kolaborujących z nimi Ukraińców i Litwinów. Za łyk wody trzeba było płacić zegarkiem albo setkami złotych. Hena pod koniec powstania, żeby uciec od morza ognia, które otaczało wtedy bunkry, towarzyszyła rodzinie w ucieczce przez kanały. Ocalała tylko ona, najmłodsza. Aby się potem uratować, musiała ukryć tożsamość i przybrać nowe imię – Krystyna Budnicka. Dziś jest honorową obywatelką miasta stołecznego Warszawy. Krysiu, kochana, składam Tobie wyrazy hołdu, uszanowania, wyrazy podziwu. Moja siostro w niedoli i w cierpieniach.
Dziękuję bardzo, dziękuję.
Drugi powód, dla którego tu dziś stoimy, to po to, żeby zadać pytania. Jak to się stało i dlaczego? Nie mam zamiaru umniejszać winy Niemców zniewolonych przez faszyzm, popierających Hitlera. Nie mam zamiaru umniejszać ich winy wobec wielu państw, narodów i grup społecznych. To oni doprowadzili do czegoś niewyobrażalnego, niemal do totalnej zagłady Żydów. Ale podglebie istniało przecież od wielu setek lat. Tym podglebiem był antysemityzm. I tu nie mogę nie zadawać pytań, dlaczego? Dlaczego ludzie odczuwają strach przed kimś, kogo uznano za obcego? Dlaczego uprzedzenia i przesądy wobec tego obcego prowadzą do wyobcowania go ze społeczeństwa? Dlaczego ten wyalienowany człowiek jest potem dehumanizowany, odczłowieczony? Dlaczego antysemityzm przeszedł drogę od nieufności wobec obcego poprzez wypychanie go ze społeczeństwa, poprzez fanatyczną nienawiść do zagłady? Dlaczego nadal dzisiaj musimy walczyć z antysemityzmem? Szanowni zgromadzeni, a oto powód trzeci naszego spotkania. Każde pokolenie odczytuje fakty z przeszłości ze swojego punktu widzenia. To jest normalne. Porównuje wydarzenia z przeszłości z teraźniejszością. Powiem, co mnie dzisiaj przede wszystkim nasuwa się na myśl, kiedy rozważam wydarzenia z kwietnia, maja 1943 roku. Ja nie byłem w getcie warszawskim. Przebywałem w innym getcie, w Łodzi, Litzmannstadt Ghetto. Trafiłem do Auschwitz i przeżyłem 2 marsze śmierci. Ostatni był z Buchenwaldu do Theresienstadtu. Tam przyniosła mi wolność armia sowiecka, w której większość stanowili Rosjanie. Moja wdzięczność dla nich, dla tych, którzy wyzwolili mnie z niemieckich obozów, będzie mi towarzyszyć do ostatniego dnia mojego życia. Ale czy mogę być obojętny? Czy mogę milczeć, gdy dzisiaj armia rosyjska dokonuje agresji na sąsiada i zaboru jego ziem? Czy mogę milczeć, gdy rakiety rosyjskie niszczą infrastrukturę ukraińską, domy, szpitale, zabytki kultury i powodują przecież gwałtowny przyrost śmiertelności i obniżenie wieku życia setek tysięcy cywili? Czy mogę milczeć, gdy widzę los Buczy? Czy mogę milczeć, gdy widzę los Buczy, a wiem, jak Niemcy unicestwili polski Michniów, białoruski Chatyń, czeskie Lidyce czy francuskie Oradour? Jeden z dowódców powstania w getcie, Marek Edelman, miałem szczęście znać go, rozmawiałem z nim wielokrotnie. Powtarzał często znamienne słowa: najważniejsze jest życie, a gdy się już ma życie, najważniejsza jest wolność. I często dla tej wolności znów przychodzi oddawać życie. Dostojni panowie prezydenci, szanowni zgromadzeni, przyjaciele, równo 125 lat temu w reakcji na antysemicką aferę Dreyfusa Emil Zola wykrzyczał: J'accuse, oskarżam. Ten krzyk Emila Zoli wstrząsnął Francją i poniekąd Europą. Sądzę, jestem głęboko przekonany, że dzisiaj stąd, z Warszawy, powinno zostać dzisiaj powtórzone to wezwanie J'accuse. Musimy się przeciwstawić antysemityzmowi, łamaniu praw człowieka, agresji na ziemię sąsiada, zakłamywaniu historii, nieposzanowaniu interesów i woli mniejszości, jakakolwiek ona jest, przez sprawującą władzę większość, gdziekolwiek ona jest. Mam obowiązek powtórzyć wezwanie. Mam obowiązek powtórzyć wezwanie. Ludzie, nie bądźcie obojętni na zło. Ludzie, bądźcie czujni. Nienawiścią bardzo łatwo zgromadzić popleczników. Czy jednak nie przyniesie ona zguby mnie, Tobie, Wam, naszym dzieciom i wnukom? Dlatego tych, którzy sieją nienawiść, Jacques, oskarżam.
Szanowni Państwo, wysłuchamy za chwilę pieśni partyzantów żydowskich Zognit Kejmol w wykonaniu młodzieżowego zespołu reprezentacyjnego miasta Kirjat Mockin Kowa Temble z Izraela, przygotowanego przez Iris Bethalewi-Schneider, chóru Dziecięcego Miasta Łodzi pod dyrekcją Waldemara Sutryka, chóru Artos imienia Władysława Skoraczewskiego przy Teatrze Wielkim Operze Narodowej, pod dyrekcją Danuty Chmurskiej, która podczas dzisiejszej uroczystości poprowadzi wszystkie 3 zespoły. Szanowni Państwo, autorem pieśni Zognit Kejmol jest żydowski poeta Hirsch Glick, który w czasie okupacji niemieckiej przebywał w getcie wileńskim. To właśnie tam, wiosną 1943 roku, na wieść o wybuchu powstania w getcie warszawskim, napisał tekst, który w przejmujących słowach upamiętnia bohaterskich bojowców. Dzisiaj pieśń partyzantów żydowskich usłyszeliśmy w 3 językach: widzisz, po hebrajsku i po polsku. Szanowni Państwo, o zabranie głosu proszę prezydenta Rzeczypospolitej Polskiej, pana Andrzeja Dudę.
Czcigodni ocaleni, czcigodni sprawiedliwi wśród narodów świata, Ekscelencje, wielce szanowni panowie prezydenci Izraela i Republiki Federalnej Niemiec, czcigodne pierwsze damy, szanowny panie premierze, wszyscy wielce szanowni przedstawiciele polskich władz na czele z marszałkami Sejmu i Senatu, szanowne panie i panowie ministrowie z Izraela, z Republiki Federalnej Niemiec, z Polski, przedstawiciele parlamentów, czcigodni duchowni, eminencjo księże kardynale, ekscelencje księża arcybiskupi i biskupi, czcigodni rabini na czele z naczelnym rabinem Rzeczypospolitej, wszyscy dostojni przybyli goście, drodzy gospodarze, przedstawiciele władz Warszawy na czele z prezydentem stołecznego miasta Warszawy, droga młodzieży z Polski i z Izraela, wszyscy szanowni państwo. W czasie II wojny światowej Warszawa dwa razy zerwała się do walki. Już w czasie okupacji. Kiedy nie udała się w 1939 roku jej obrona. Kiedy nie zdołała obronić jej ani polska armia, ani wspierający ją tutaj mieszkańcy. Kiedy przyszli Niemcy i tak jak zajmowali znakomitą większość ówczesnej Rzeczypospolitej, tak zajęli również jej stolicę. Po to, by potem Polska całkowicie padła dodatkowo pod ciosami sowieckich kolb karabinowych i kul.
Under the Soviet rifles and bullets, so that it would be erased from the map of the world, so that in its part it would become simply the territory of the German Reich, and in part the territory of the general government and of the Soviet state. Then Republic of Poland was different than the one which we know today, all of us living in it today. The then Republic of Poland was the Republic of many nations. Warsaw was back at that time already a big city, the biggest one in Poland. But at the same time, it was the second biggest city with Jewish population, second biggest after New York. There was 350,000 Polish citizens of Jewish nationality here in Warsaw. It was that kind of state that we had back then, where the Jewish community, along with the Polish people, and also along with other nations, was alive for almost 1,000 years, under one roof, so to speak. Throughout different periods in history, but together. That history, precisely, the 1,000 years, is documented by the Polin Museum, next to which we are standing right now. Out of those 1,000 years of history, the 1939 brought a total breakthrough, and it also inflicted the breakdown of relations. The German Nazis came. They crushed the then Republic of Poland, not only in terms of politics, not only in terms of statehood, but also in terms of the society. By dramatically cutting the society through. They enslaved everyone, but from among those enslaved, they also singled out and branded those who were part of the Jewish nation, who were Polish Jews. The ones who were living here, who attended schools, who were speaking the same language as everyone else. They were speaking Polish. They knew Polish literature, history. They were studying here. They were working here. They were creating. They were artists, actors, university professors, lawyers, doctors, workers, entrepreneurs, owners of shops. They created this grand social fabric. They were singled out and branded. They were stigmatized. As we have just heard from President Marian Turski, they were branded and stigmatized with hatred, yes. And they were confined to ghettos. Today, we are gathered at an area which the German Nazis turned into a ghetto, a district where Polish Jews were crowded into from all over Warsaw and also from the surrounding towns. A gigantic number of 450,000 persons were crowded on a constrained area of just a few dozen streets, in conditions which us, the contemporaries, cannot imagine, horrible conditions. They were degrading not only for the living standards, but first and foremost, they degraded any kind of human decency because they were not treated in a human way. Right from the start, their intention was simply to murder them. First, to use their work, and then kill them, annihilate them, wipe them off the face of the earth, erase them from the memory of the earth. And that was what they were doing precisely here, gradually, at a bigger and bigger pace, by sending Jews from here, deporting them to the mass extermination camps, to Treblinka, to Auschwitz, killing them here on the spot, murdering with starvation, disease. And then, according to those who survived that time, and according to historians, there were few of those Polish Jews left here in this ghetto, some 50, maybe 55,000. The majority of them were young ones, because those were still needed to work. Anger would well up in those people. Their anger of despair was growing. They used all means and measures their own devices and also using the outside support also provided by the Polish organizations of the underground state, the Home Army, and others. Weapons were collected. Weapons were bought from own reserves, from own financial reserves. It was exchanged. People were looking for different possibilities to rebel, to stand up and fight. Then, the ones who survived and who, by miracle, went out of the ghetto, who by miracle survived the uprising, they would then recall, just like Kazik, like Marek Edelman. They said, as a matter of fact, it was not a fight for life. It was simply our fight against them. It was our fight for dignity. First and foremost, for a dignified death. For death according to our conditions, according to our rules. As a matter of fact, it was a fight for freedom. Not, unfortunately, for a freedom as a free and independent life, but for freedom of one's own decision, taking decisions about one's own fate. But also that was a revenge for pain, for suffering, for murders, and for the death of one's loved ones. Just look at this monument. When it was erected back in the 1940s, it was called one of the most poignant monuments to the heroism and suffering of the Second World War. The suffering, because it is expressed first and foremost on the reverse side, but also heroism, which you can see in the faces of the insurgents of the Warsaw Ghetto, but also through the burning flame of the menorahs. Just look. At their supports, at the bases of the menorahs. They are held by the lions. Lions which symbolize courage and valor. The Warsaw Ghetto Uprising is, to me, as President of the Republic of Poland, and to us today, to the posterity, first and foremost, the symbol of courage, determination, and bravery. The will to fight for one's freedom, the will to take decisions about one's own fate. Incredible, fearless bravery and absolute determination. Today, we can ask the questions, but what was their role model? What were they looking up to? We can say for sure, yes, they recalled the big ancient Jewish fighters, the grand heroes, the Maccabees, the insurgents, the heroic defenders of Masada. That will for sure be said by the President of Israel present here today. That will for sure be said by the rabbis present here. That for sure will be said by the representatives of the Jewish community from all over the world present with us here today. And this will surely be said also by those who are looking at us and listening to us in Israel. But I will say, but perhaps they also recalled what they had read in their school books about Ordon, who was fighting for Poland, and Mickiewicz would write about him that he would blow up his redoubt because he would not surrender into the hands of the enemy. They, I'm sure, remembered the figure of Wołodyjowski, the figure described by Henryk Sienkiewicz, whom they knew from their school books, who blew up the fortress of Kamieniec-Podolski because he would not surrender that fortress as a soldier into the hands of the enemy, to the surrounding Turkish army. They are our common heroes. They are the heroes of Israel. They are the heroes of Jews all over the world. They are the heroes of Poland and of the Polish people. Many of them, those who survived the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, later fought in the Warsaw Uprising, along with their oftentimes schoolmates. They were they were sitting in the same school bank. They were fighting against the Nazi Germans, against the occupiers. They were fighting for freedom. They gave their lives for it. Also fighting here for a free Poland. Before their brothers, their fathers fought in the Polish armed forces for a free Poland, and they perished in 1920 as well as in 1939. In 1920, they were defending Poland against Soviets, and in 1939, they defended Poland against Germans. They were the ones who would later build the State of Israel. Their brothers were members of the Polish armed forces in the West, in the Anders army. Then they constituted the core of the Army of Israel. Their brothers, their cousins, would later be members of the Knesset. But it's also them who would later build Poland. Them, just like Marek Edelman, later fought for tens of years to make sure that Poland is free again. No one else, precisely him, Marek Edelman, the hero of the then Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. Was later part of the Polish anti-communist underground. He was a man of solidarity. He was a member of the Committee for the Defense of Workers. He fought for a free, sovereign, and independent Poland. He fought here for the freedom of the Polish and Jewish nations. During the Second World War, in the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. Here he worked after the Second World War, treating people, and also here he was fighting for our state's full freedom and independence and sovereignty. Here's where he died, and he rests in a cemetery also here. This is a history of our common Republic of Poland. Today, we bow our heads before the heroes of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. We bow our heads to all those who fought against hatred and Nazism for their freedom and for their dignity. We bow our heads to Polish Jews, Polish citizens who never surrendered, who never lost their spirit, and who until this day set a great example to all of us. And in Israel, for every soldier defending the borders of Israel. And to us, Poles, who are guarding the borders of the Republic of Poland, and all those who serve in the Polish armed forces. Yes, the insurgents of the Warsaw Ghetto are an everlasting example of valor, of heroism. They are a symbol of courage, dignity, and valor, just like lions. These lions which support the menorahs. We shall never forget them. And I always stress, perhaps there would not be freedom without a single drop spilled in blood in battle. But perhaps there would be no victory without one gesture of resistance, which we might not estimate high enough. We must never forget about the valor and the stance of the Polish Jews from the Warsaw Ghetto. Warsawians and inhabitants of the towns and villages near Warsaw. Yes, they were the ones, precisely. Not only the ones who were fighting with arms in their hands, but also the ones on the other side, the reverse side of this monument, because all historians stress that what astounded the German Nazis back then was the resistance, which lasted here in the ghetto for 1 month. It was a resistance not only of those who were holding arms in their hands, it was a resistance also of those who simply held to the walls and wouldn't let themselves be dragged out, and they would rather burn down than surrender into the hands of Nazis. They were common people. Men, elderly people, and children. That very valor was also their share. We must never forget that. A glory to the heroes, a glory to the insurgents of the Warsaw Ghetto. May the memory of the murdered and the fallen one live on. And may everyone in Poland and also in every single corner of the globe remember. Everyone who sows hatred, everyone who tramples another man, tramples the graves of the heroes of the insurgents of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. They trample on the graves of the murdered Jews, but they also trample on the graves of all those who were helping back then the persecuted ones, the murdered ones. They also trample on the graves of the righteous among the nations. From here, from my country, from Poland, and from other countries, all the other countries around the world. All those who were helping Jews. All those who were helping and are helping other persecuted ones, for which they perished and for which they were murdered. Glory to the heroes. May the memory of the murdered and the perished live on.
Szanowni Państwo,
Ladies and gentlemen, may I now invite the President of the State of Israel, His Excellency Isaac Herzog, to take the floor.
היום לפני 80 שנה, ב-19 באפריל 1943,
8 years ago, on April the 9th, 1943, a Jewish resident of the Warsaw Ghetto, whose name remains unknown to this day, wrote the following in his diary. We walk in freeze, stepping on the cobblestones of the street, this very route on which 300,000 Jews have trodden. And this is the end. This is how he put it in the diary. The end of the road. Calmly, I calculate. It is now 2 p.m. I look at the clear skies in April. Come nightfall, we will be taken to Treblinka camp. And when the dawn breaks, I will no longer be alive. It is a simple calculation. This is the very last time I am seeing the blue skies between the clouds. Today, exactly 8 decades later, I think about this anonymous man. I look at the skies like he did, the same April skies, clouded, and the sense of pain pierces my heart. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished President of the Republic of Poland, distinguished Federal President of Germany, our dearest survivors and the Second World War heroes, families, dear assembled guests. I come here today from Jerusalem, the eternal capital of a free, sovereign, Jewish, democratic state of Israel. I come here, and with me, with us, the sons and daughters of the entire families, entire communities, who were and continue to be symbols of a vibrant Jewish life, a millennial-old history, the rich and thriving culture of a Polish Jewry. They stand as symbols of the highest valor in ghettos, in camps, in forests, everywhere, always and by every means, during the unimaginable carnage of the Holocaust that befell our people in World War II. We have come here exactly 8 years to the day since the outbreak of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, the emblem of heroism, during humanity's darkest hour. Here, at this place where we gather, stood the ghetto, crumpled, bustling, bursting with life. Nearby there was the collection point, Umschlagplatz. It was there, as Mr. Turski put it, that the fate of 300,000 Polish Jews was sealed. Among them children, the elderly, women and men, who were all deported to the Treblinka death camp. When I close my eyes, I can see the brave warriors of the uprising. I can imagine the members of a Jewish combat organization and the Jewish military union. The few hundred souls who faced the thousands of Nazi soldiers who stormed the ghetto to annihilate them, facing the forces of a Nazi oppressor, trained, monstrous, armed to the teeth, who broke into door after door, house after house, in a vicious and inconceivable hunt for Jews, who faced only one fate, death and extermination. And a group of young Polish Jews stood against them, determined, full of faith and hope, drawing their strength from the heroic streak that runs like a red thread through the Jewish history, starting from King David's brave men to the warriors of Masada, Bar Kokhba, and Maccabees. They fought against every odd, from the rooftops, from sewers, from the deepest cellars, in the streets, in the courtyards, behind crumbling walls, and in rooms going up in flames. And they won. We had no chance of victory in battle, recalled Tivia Lubetkin, a woman whom I admired all my life, a member of the leadership of a Jewish combat organization, a heroine of the uprising, whose granddaughter, Eyal, named for the name of the acronym of a Jewish combat organization, is here with us today. It was clear to us that we had no chance of victory in the common understanding of the word, but we knew that at the end of the day we would emerge victorious, we, the weak ones. This was our victory, our belief in justice, our belief in mankind. Sylvia was right and her comrades were right, and doubly so. Most of the warriors of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising did not survive, but their spirit of man, won here on this soil, sanctified with the blood of our heroic brethren. Who is the hero? This is one of the core questions of a Jewish existence. Here the answer is clear. They were the heroes, not only here, but all across Europe, in the trails of tears, in the depths of carnage, in the confines of the ghettos, and in the camps of extermination. In all circles of hell, in the world that was falling apart, in the shadow of death, under conditions of humiliation, famine, and forced labor, in ghettos, in killing pits, on the death trains, in the gas chambers and crematoria, facing concentration camps and extermination camps. They all succeeded, mothers, fathers, children, grandfathers, grandmothers, in upholding human morality, mutual responsibility, faith, and basic humanity, a love of your brother, the most fundamental Jewish imperative. Love thy neighbor as thyself. And they were not alone with them in a heroic battle against the Nazis and their accomplices. In every country, there were righteous among the nations, members of the resistant movements, including, of course, the Polish righteous among the nations, and the Polish members of the underground who risked their lives and chose not to stand by idly. I stand here in those sacred moments of time, in a place where the whole branches of our people were cut down, destroyed, tortured, and annihilated, in a place where the Jewish hope and faith faced challenges that like of which the humanity has never known. And I cannot help but imagine my compatriots, beloved ones, who would never part, neither in lives nor in deaths. I cannot imagine what they would say, what they would have thought in these dark hours, in the stretch of sewers and suffocating cellars. Someone would whisper into their ears that 80 years after, we, the presidents of Poland and Germany, would be standing here to salute them, to salute their heroism, and to swear an eternal oath together to their sacred memory, an oath which sounds never again. No one, oh none of you. Where did it lead? As it led nowhere. Oh, you dig, and I dig myself towards you, and on our finger the ring awakens. So wrote the great Jewish poet Paul Celan in a poem describing his life as forced laborer during the Second World War. This was translated into Hebrew by Professor Uzi Shavit, who sadly passed away just a few weeks ago. The same hands that dug 80 years ago, today in this place meet the hands that dug here in recent months and years, finding more and more evidence of a life that once existed and the heroism that once existed, the heroism of body and mind. These moving discoveries are imperative. Go on digging, discovering, finding every scrap of memory, every trace of life that was there and is no more, to remember and to stir recollection, especially bearing our today's youth in mind. Your Excellency, the President of the Republic of Poland, I thank you for your colossal efforts and your commitment to the labor of remembrance and commemoration, including right here, in this very place. We must remember there is nothing postmodern or relativistic about the Holocaust remembrance. Absolute evil existed in the form of the Nazis and their accomplices, and absolute good existed in the form of the victims and the rebels from every nation. And in passing this heritage down to posterity, it must reflect this indisputable axiom: no ifs, no buts. The heroism of the resistance and the rebels and their imperative to remember the terrible chapter of history when the Jewish people faced complete annihilation and destruction rained down upon Poland and many other countries. And this is a very important platform now to deepen the dialogue between Poland and Israel, advancement of friendship between our people, a friendship which I believe will further flourish and develop and allow us to elucidate and analyze in depth disagreements and pain, but also the important partnerships, also on the basis of our shared future. Your Excellency, President of Germany, in your unforgettable address at Yad Vashem in Jerusalem, at the ceremony marking the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau death camp, you repeated two key words which point to the most important interconnection between the past and the present: guilt and responsibility. Thank you for your moral leadership and for being such an important and significant force in deepening the friendship between our two peoples, centered on the eternal commitment to remember, a commitment of being responsible for the future, for security, for the prosperity of the State of Israel. My dear beloved Holocaust survivors, dear families, ladies and gentlemen, today we salute the heroism that worked like a miracle, but it must be sanctified in practical terms through learning, drawing lessons, through handing down this heritage and the torch of responsibility from generation to generation. This responsibility is for us a lifelong duty. When we stand here in the heart of one of the loftiest symbols of the Holocaust and heroism, we remember that as great as the threat is, so too is the common force with which we must confront the threat. There was no precedent for the fusion of solidarity, humanity, and mutual responsibility that alone defeated Nazi Germany and the Axis powers. And here we do understand this sacred alliance that the family of nations forged in the light of the tragedy, to sanctify the memory of the victims, to stand firmly and collectively for the State of Israel's right to exist and thrive as a sovereign home of the Jewish people, to teach and to educate in the light of the historic catastrophe that Holocaust was, to fight with all our might against any manifestations of racism, anti-Semitism, and hatred. Ladies and gentlemen, coming to the close, a few weeks ago I had an honor of meeting Aliza Wittes-Szomron. She was a girl of 15 years in the Warsaw Ghetto in 1943. Now she's 95. Aliza's father, Shimek Simha, was murdered in the Majdanek camp. As a young girl, a member of a youth movement and underground, Aliza risked her life by distributing posters in the ghetto calling the Jews to resist. Just before the outbreak of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising in the spring of 1943, her mother managed to obtain forged papers. She wanted to smuggle Aliza to a hideout beyond the walls of a ghetto, but Aliza did not want to leave her underground fighter comrades behind. One of her friends encouraged her and implored her to flee. She left Aliza a chilling, dying wish, saying, "Go, you will survive. Someone has got to stay alive to tell people how we died. This will be your role if you manage to survive." I took these words to be my life's mission, my calling on earth. This is what Aliza told me during our meeting at the President's residence in Jerusalem and then in Knesset. This was my mission. Aliza was unable to come here today, but on her behalf and in her name, in the name of the victims and survivors, in the name of many millions who cannot stand here, I humbly, as President of a nation-state of a Jewish people, the State of Israel, a descendant of a community of Łomża, who were completely wiped out in the atrocities of Holocaust, I stand before you and pledge never again. The eternity of Israel shall not lie. Am Israel Chai. The people of Israel live. May the memories of the heroes of resistance and liberty and all the victims of a terrible Holocaust be preserved. and be engraved in our hearts of our people and all people around the world from generation to generation forevermore.
Szanowni Państwo,
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like now to give the floor to the Federal President of the Federal Republic of Germany, His Excellency Mr. Frank-Walter Steinmeier.
Seid gesund, Chaverim und Freund. Sei gesund, jedes Volk, der lost nicht mehr zu a solche Chobeines.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is difficult to address you today here, where the Warsaw Ghetto once was. And for this reason, I don't want to begin with my own words, but rather have one of the heroines of the ghetto speak in the language that was spoken by so many Jews here in Warsaw, in Poland, in Europe. In the language that Germans wanted to eradicate. The painter Gela Seckstein left us this devastating will and testament before she was deported to Treblinka with her little daughter Margalit. Distinguished President of the Republic of Poland, distinguished President of the State of Israel, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It is so necessary, yet so difficult, to come here as a German and as Germany's federal president. The terrible crimes that Germans committed here fill me with profound shame. But it also fills me with gratitude and humility to be able to participate in this commemoration. As the first German head of state to do so. Distinguished President Duda, thank you for inviting me to come. It means more than I can say for me to be here today together with you and your compatriots, to join in remembrance together with you, President Herzog, together with you, Marian Turski, Krystyna Budnicka, Elżbieta Ficowska. I stand before you today. It is extremely important to me. I stand before you today as Germany's federal president and bow down before the brave fighters of the Warsaw Ghetto. I bow down before the dead in grief and sorrow. Steely and ruthless, the first cold days sweep away those who are already living on the streets, who have sold all of their clothing and are weak as autumn flies. The incredible vitality of Warsaw's Jews is in vain. They cry out and defend themselves to the end, to the last hour and minute. But this hour and minute will come. Rachel Auerbach, who was herself forced to live in the ghetto, wrote these lines in her diary. How much pain fills these few sentences, how much grief, but also how much composure. Rachel Auerbach knew that the Jews of Warsaw were lost. It is to her records and those of the other contributors to the Ringelblum archive that we owe our knowledge of the atrocities the Nazis perpetrated here, and the memory of a world that they obliterated. A city is destroyed, and a people is destroyed. wrote Rachel Auerbach. It is shocking to read of the horror that was suffered by the people behind the high walls of the ghetto. It is a report straight out of hell, but it is also deeply moving to read of the strength, the humanity, the courage that so many people retained. Even love had its place in the ghetto, as the great Marek Edelman so poignantly recounted. Honored guests, the young people around Mordechai Anielewicz, Marek Edelman, Itzhak Zuckerman, and many others, the heroes of the Warsaw Ghetto, showed unimaginable courage in darkest night. They wanted to send a message, a sign of unshaken dignity in the face of certain death. They rose up against brutal injustice, against terror, murder. Their courage shone out far beyond Warsaw and encouraged others. Their courage shines out into our present too. Rachel Auerbach and Marek Edelman were among the few survivors of the ghetto. Their whole life, they saw it as their task to bear witness. Rachel Auerbach in Israel, Marek Edelman here in Poland. We who survived leave this to you so that the memory will not be lost. This is their legacy to us, to preserve and pass on this memory, so that what happened will not happen again, as the great Primo Levi said. That is the duty that they leave to us. This is the duty that the Polin Museum has taken on, to preserve the memory of Jewish life in Poland and in Europe. Jewish life that has flourished once again and will continue to thrive. That is why it is so important for us to remember. That is why it is so important for us Germans to remember. Gela Seckstein, Rachel Auerbach, Marek Edelman, Mordechai Anielewicz, Emanuel Ringelblum. Who knows their names in Germany today? Reflecting on the crimes that the Germans committed here, in occupied Poland, here in the Warsaw Ghetto, deserves a greater space in our memory. That is why it is so important to me to be here today with you. I am here today to say to you that we Germans are aware of our responsibility, and we are aware of the mission the survivors and the dead have left to us, and we accept it. For us Germans, no line can ever be drawn under the responsibility imposed by our history. It stays with us as a warning and a duty for both the present and the future. Germans invaded Poland. They attacked Wieluń on the 1st of September 1939. It was the beginning of the Second World War, which we commemorated together in Wieluń and here in Warsaw 4 years ago. A war that was to claim the lives of well over 50 million people, including millions of Poles. A war that here and in the east of Europe became a murderous war of annihilation, a war that led into barbarity. Germans meticulously planned and carried out the crime against humanity that was the Shoah. Germans persecuted, enslaved, murdered Europe's Jews, the Jews of Warsaw, the Jews of Europe, with a cruelty and inhumanity for which we have no words. The fact that the man primarily responsible for the liquidation of the ghetto, the brutal and cynical butcher Jürgen Stroop, was from the city where I was born is a historical coincidence, but one which compelled me repeatedly to consider the hell of the Warsaw Ghetto, the victims and the diabolical perpetrator, as well as his accomplices. It is also true that far too few of the other perpetrators were held accountable after the war. I stand before you today and ask for your forgiveness for the crimes committed here by Germans. Distinguished President Duda, distinguished President Herzog, many people in your two countries, in Poland and in Israel, gave us Germans the gift of reconciliation despite these crimes, despite the crime against humanity that was the Shoah. What an unspeakably precious gift that was, a gift that we could not expect and had no right to expect. It was this gift that made it all possible for our countries, Poland and Germany, Israel and Germany, to now be united in deep friendship. This friendship between our countries is truly a miraculous achievement. It is miraculous after the unprecedented crimes of the Germans. And it is the achievement of the generations before us, the brave, painstaking work of those before us, the work of Israelis, Poles, and Germans who reached out to one another across the abyss of the past for a better future. Ladies and gentlemen, 75 years after the State of Israel was founded, almost 60 years after the Polish bishop's letter, more than 50 years after Willy Brandt fell to his knees here in this square, almost 40 years after the first Israeli state visit to Germany by your father, Chaim Herzog, we stand here, dear Andrzej, dear Budzi, in this historic place, in remembrance of those who were murdered, and in acceptance of our responsibility for the miraculous achievement of reconciliation. I know that all three of us are bound by the same commitment. We must, and we will, preserve the miraculous achievement of reconciliation and carry it forward into the future. The most important lesson to be learned from our history is never again. Never again racist fanaticism, never again unbridled nationalism, never again a barbaric war of aggression. Never again. This is the basis of our shared Europe. All of us here, joining in remembrance today, believe in our shared future and our shared values. The respect for international law, the peaceful coexistence of all human beings in freedom and democracy. With Vladimir Putin's illegal attack on a peaceful, democratic neighboring country, he has made a mockery of these values and destroyed the foundations of our European security order. The Russian president has violated international law, called borders into question, committed land grabs. This war is bringing immeasurable suffering, violence, destruction, and death to the people in Ukraine. In Poland, in Israel, you know from our history that freedom and independence must be fought for and defended. You know how important it is for a democracy to show that it is vigilant and capable of defending itself. Yet we Germans too have learned the lessons from our past. Never again. That means that there must be no brutal war of aggression in Europe, like that waged by Russia against Ukraine. Never again. That means that we stand firmly by the side of Ukraine, together with Poland and our other allies. We are providing Ukraine with humanitarian, political, and military support, together with Poland and our other allies. Never again. That means that we, the liberal democracies, are strong when we act together and in unity. This is what I mean when I speak of our responsibility imposed by our history. We Germans will fulfill this responsibility for defending peace and freedom. And I am convinced that our countries, our liberal democracies, have grown even closer in the past months. Our friendship now rests on an even firmer foundation. Ladies and gentlemen, here in this square, by the memorial to the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, I stand before you in grief and humility. I affirm our responsibility for the crimes of the past and our responsibility for our assured future. Thank you very much.
Szanowni Państwo,
Ladies and gentlemen, and now I would like to give the floor to the President of the World Jewish Congress, Mr. Ronald Lauder.
President Duda, President Herzog, President Steinmeier, Mayor Trzaskowski, Marion Tursky. Marion, we've known each other for 43 years. When I first joined you, you were the head of the Jewish Historical Institute. He kept all the records of the Jewish people alive, and he single-handedly made sure that nothing was lost or was given to the Historical Institute against a great deal of pressure from the Communist Party. I do not represent a country like the other presidents here today. Instead, I represent 8 million Jewish people, roughly in 100 countries throughout the diaspora. But no matter where we live, this place, the Warsaw Ghetto, and this event, the uprising that happened 80 years ago, will always be part of the Jewish people worldwide. For me, this is very personal. I am filled with memories. I first came here in the 1970s, more than 50 years ago. Part of the ghetto still lay in ruins. I stood here, right over there, where the soldiers are, on the corner. It was night. There was a full moon. I saw large open spaces. There was no Polish museums. There were no trees. It was just empty fields. It snowed that night, and that night there was a full moon. And in the shadows, you could see the outline of some of the streets there. And you could see where the ghetto once was. What I did not realize, I only found out later, what was there in the intersection of Genscher and Samahofer streets, that revolt began. And that is why this monument is here. April 19th, 1943, was the first night of Passover. It was agreed among the Jewish people that that would be the night they fought back. Passover is obviously a time when Jews everywhere were supposed to sit down and tell the story of Moses leading the Jewish people out of the slavery of Egypt. This small band of Jews stood up and said, we're going to fight for our freedom against the modern-day slavery and the evil world that's around us. Even though it was silent that night, in my mind, I could hear the screams, the machine guns, the explosions, and then silence. I stood there for an hour. The next morning, I went to Mila 18, or Miwa 18, the headquarters of the Jewish resistance. I stood there thinking about the leaders of the uprising, taking their own lives rather than dying at the hands of the Germans. It reminded me of the Jewish fighters 2,000 years ago who took their own lives in Masada rather than die in the hands of the Romans. Ever since then, whenever I've come back to Warsaw, I come to Mill 18 to say Kaddish, the Jewish memorial prayer for those brave men and women, all who have died. I remember that on the 60th anniversary here, I met one of the survivors, Merrick Edelman, who spoke to me about his experiences in the Warsaw Ghetto. And he also told me and made me promise that I would do everything I can to help the Jewish people. I was an assimilated Jew at that time from New York. But after my conversation with Merrick Edelman, I promised him, and I kept my promise, to work for the Jewish people. Hearing from him was something that frankly changed my life. Recently, a camera was found nearby here, and when they developed the film, they realized that the camera had taken pictures, had pictures of the Warsaw Ghetto. And one of the pictures, you see a group of Jewish people being led out of the ghetto under the guns of his stormtroopers. This picture was taken from a window above, and you could see in this picture a young girl. She couldn't have been more than 4 or 5 years old, with a beautiful little black coat and a hat, a white hat. She was walking, holding her mother and father's hands. And I looked at the picture. We know something they didn't know then. In the next 48 hours, they would all be dead. That picture says a lot about what happened, and it says a lot about the tragedy, the 1.5 million children who died. I'd like to talk about something else at the same time as today. 1 year later, in 1944, there's another struggle for the Warsaw. In 1944, the Polish underground was told to rise up against the Germans in a coordinated battle, aided by the Red Army. But the Soviets double-crossed them and held back. 16,000 Polish fighters were killed, but 200,000 civilians were murdered in mass executions. President Duda, all of us must focus what brings us here today. Our shared history, our shared courage, our shared friendship, and our common goals. But we always also remember that all Poles fought the Nazis here, Polish Jews in the Warsaw Ghetto, and 1 year later, Polish Catholics in the 1944 Polish Warsaw Uprising. Everyone here must use these brave young men and women as inspiration when we find and we face the kind of hatred that we are seeing today throughout the world. Hatred of anti-Semitism, hatred against people, all types of people. Let us draw strength from them. Let us draw courage. And let us always remember their courage in their face of hatred, and to fight back with everything you have, whatever the means. May God bless their memory, and may God bless all of you. Thank you.
Szanowni Państwo.
Ladies and gentlemen, May I now invite the mayor of the capital city of Warsaw, Mr. Trzaskowski, to take the floor.
Szanowni
Dear survivors, distinguished presidents of Poland, Israel, Germany, distinguished first ladies, Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Prime Minister, all distinguished guests, welcome. Shalom. This immeasurable tragedy of the Holocaust, of the ghetto, of the Warsaw Ghetto, is also an unimaginable tragedy of Warsaw, of our beloved city. 1/3 of all the pre-war inhabitants of Warsaw were Jewish people, our compatriots. And you have seen just a moment ago those heartbreaking shots and pictures of the Warsaw Ghetto. Few years before they were taken, these streets, the same streets, would be bustling with life. As my mother and my grandmother remembered them, they were bustling with life. They were vibrant, full of hustle and bustle. Unfortunately, so few remnants of our shared citizens were left until this very day, even if opposite to this district there is the Szmulowizna district, so widely inhabited by the Jewish population before the war. And this heritage, this history, is so well depicted in the Polin Museum, which sheds light on the 1,000 years of our interconnected, merged history. Just as the communities merged together, the house where I was raised at the corner of Freta and Franciszkańska Street, was headed courtyard intersected by the ghetto wall, the wall which set apart the communities that used to live together. And what happened in the Holocaust, what happened in the tragedy of the ghetto, was like tearing part of our hearts from our chests. The parts of our hearts torn out from our chests by the Germans who perpetrated this unique slaughter. But I must tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that we also have marks of the Jewish Warsaw. We, the Warsawians, women and men, in our language, in our sensitivities, in our cuisine, they are all alive. Please consider, every Warsaw citizen has a kiepeła, a bit of chutzpah, and is shedding blichtr and feels best in one's own ferajna. These are Yiddish words that became part of our own mother tongue. Almost every Polish child was ushered into adulthood by the poets Jan Brzechwa, Tuwim. When we fall in love, we read Leśmian. This is all in ourselves, where a Warsawian is abroad and feels lost and doesn't find a Polish place, a Polish restaurant to go to. One goes to the Jewish place because this is very much the same taste, very much the similar cuisine. We often wonder how come that the Ghetto Uprising broke out in the Warsaw Ghetto. Why Warsaw Uprising broke out here in Warsaw because this is the unifying spirit of the Warsavian women and men. They are strong and they always stand up for dignity. Dear ladies and gentlemen, what is most important, what is something that we need to bear in mind all the time is the message that comes out of the whole story. I wish to take this opportunity to thank Professor Marian Turski for whatever he told us. And you mentioned that the 11th commandment for all of us should be, thou shalt not be indifferent. Thou shalt not be indifferent, because after what happened, there is no place, no room in Warsaw, in Poland, and worldwide for anti-Semitism, for the lack of tolerance. And this message that goes out of the Warsaw Ghetto is very much imprinted in our hearts, of us, the people of Warsaw. This is part of our DNA. That is why Warsaw will be always an open city, tolerant city, friendly city. We will always stand by the ones who suffer from any attack or persecution, because this is part of our DNA. This is part of our DNA also due to what happened here, this unspeakable tragedy witnessed by the Warsaw Ghetto. But this is also a very ambitious commitment to fight anti-Semitism, to fight intolerance in any form or shape. The Duke of Kalisz, Bolesław the Pious, in 1264, wrote that the blame for shedding Christian blood should no longer be assigned to Jews. Back then, in 1264, the Polish Duke knew that it was absolutely necessary to fight the vicious propaganda, fake news, and lies. And this is the message. Thou shalt not be indifferent. This is the slogan that accompanies us throughout our commemoration ceremony. That's why we were also not indifferent in the face of what has been happening beyond our eastern border. That's why we opened our hearts and accepted our neighbors and friends, and we shall continue in the same footsteps, not to be indifferent, to show solidarity, the grand message, the lofty message that comes from Warsaw. Warsaw was doomed to fail, was sentenced to death. The Jewish Warsaw, Warsaw as a whole, it was sentenced by Hitler to perish. That's why, if we look today at the Ukrainian cities that are sentenced to their deaths, we do our best. As much as Warsaw, so much also Kharkiv and other cities and towns will be resurrected like phoenix. And coming to the close of my speech, I want to assure you, ladies and gentlemen, that we, the Warsavian people, we miss our sisters and brethren who were slaughtered here every day, day in, day out. And if we had more diversity, it would enrich us immensely. It would bless us with even more of wisdom. If it wasn't for this atrocious tragedy, we will always remember.
Szanowni Państwo, odbędzie.
Ladies and gentlemen, and now a joint prayer will be said for those murdered. Please, ladies and gentlemen, rise.
Shir
Hamalois mi mama kim kurusichu adoinoi adoinoi Shimo v'koili Tiena znechu kashivois lekoi letachaninoi Imavonois Tishmor yo Adoinoi mi amoid Ki mecho hachaslichu Leman tivorai Ki visi adoinoi kivsu nafshi Veli devuroi hoi chavaleti Hoi nafshi ladoinoi Mishayim rim labo boiker Shaim rim laboiker Oyachavai Yisruel el Adoinoi Kim Adoinoi HaChesed V'charebai Imoi V'chi oivdes Yisroel Mikoi Vovonoiso
מלא רחמים, שוכן במרומים, המצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה, במעלות קדושים טהורים כזורקי המסירים, את נשמות מורדי גטו ורשה וכל יהודי ורשה שנהרגו ושנחנקו ושנשחטו ושנשרפו חיים פה בגטו ורשה. בגן עדן תראה מנוחתם, בערבו שכולנו מתפללים בהזכרת נשמותיהם. לכן הבעל הרחמים יסתירם בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרור בצחורים חיים ונשמתם. אדוני הוא נחלתם, ינוחם בשלום משכבם, ונאמר אמן. כולנו יחד יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, מעמד דברי חיותי, ימליך מלכותי, בחייכון ובימיכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה וזמן קריב, יאמרו אמן. Yehei Shmei Rabba Mevarach Li'olam Li'omei Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitpa'ar V'yitromam V'yitnaseh Yitadar V'yitalev V'yitalal Shmei D'Kudsha B'richu Le'ela Min Kol Birchata V'shirata Tushpachata V'nechamata Le'amiran B'yalma V'yimru Amen Yehei Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya V'chayim Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'yimru Amen Oseh Shalom Min Romav Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'yimru Amen.
Psalm 130. Z otchłani grzechu ku Bożemu miłosierdziu. Z głębokości wołam do Ciebie, Panie. O Panie, słuchaj głosu mego.
Psalm 130.
W uszu ku głośnemu błaganiu mojemu.
Jeśli zachowasz pamięć o grzechach, Panie, Panie, któż się ostoi? Ale Ty udzielasz przebaczenia, aby Cię otaczano bojaźnią.
W Panu pokładam nadzieję. Dusza moja żyje nadzieją, oczekuje na Twe słowo. Dusza moja oczekuje Pana, tęskniej niż stróże poranku, bardziej niż stróże poranku.
Niech Izrael wygląda Pana. U Pana bowiem jest łaskawość i obfite u Niego odkupienie. On odkupił Izraela z wszystkich jego grzechów.
Szanowni Państwo, prosimy.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing. In a minute, we will hear the roll call of remembrance. Captain Patryk Koroś will read out the roll call. After that, we will hear the honorary salute and also listen to the signal of the Polish Armed Forces.
Kombatanci I weterani.
Veterans, heroes of the struggle for freedom, families of the Holocaust victims, Poles rescuing and helping their Jewish brothers and sisters, Poles and Jews, soldiers of the Polish Armed Forces. Listen up, everyone. We stand up to the roll call of remembrance in front of the monument to the Warsaw Ghetto Heroes, to pay tribute to the fighters of the first urban uprising in German-occupied Europe, who faced overwhelming enemy forces. Their fierceness in battle and courage is a symbol of resistance to the terrible crime of the Holocaust. Today, on the 80th anniversary of the outbreak of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, we invoke the memory of the Polish and Jewish victims murdered during World War II. I call upon the fighters of the Jewish Combat Organization and the Jewish Military Union, as well as all Polish Jews who, with arms in their hands, resisted to the German occupier. I call on the insurgents who fought fierce battles for the bunkers in Nowolipki, Leszno, and Franciszkańska streets, and in defense of the bunker of the command of the Jewish Combat Organization in Miła Street. Stand up to the roll call. Glory to the heroes. I call on the commandant of the Jewish fighting organization, Mordechai Anielewicz, and his deputy, Marek Edelman, and all their soldiers, among them Itzhak Zuckerman, Simcha Reitaiser Rotem, and Israel Chaim Wilner. I call on the commandant of the Jewish Military Union, Pavel Frankel, and all his subordinates. Stand up to the roll call. Fallen on the field of glory. I call on the women of the Jewish combat units, the liaison officers of the Jewish Military Union, Nina Grinspan-Frymer and Helena Rufeisen-Schupper, of the Jewish Combat Organization, as well as Mira Fuchrer and other women killed in the command bunker in Miła Street. I call on the youngest defenders of the ghetto, among them Lusiek and Jurek Błones, Tadek Szejngut, Szlamek Schuster, and others who stood shoulder to shoulder with the adult insurgents, defending their families and fellow residents of the ghetto. Stand up to the roll call. Honor their memory. I call on the members of the anti-fascist fighting organization headed by Mordechai Tenenbaum, who stood up against the bestiality of the German occupiers in the Białystok ghetto. I call on the insurgents from the Będzin-Sosnowiec ghetto, as well as the participants in the revolts in the extermination camps in Auschwitz-Birkenau, Sobibór, and Treblinka, headed by Samuel Willenberg. Stand up to the roll call. Honor their memory. I call on the members of the Council to Aid Jews, Żegota, at the delegation of the government of the Republic of Poland, Julian Grobelny, Tadeusz Rek and Leon Fejner, Zofia Kosak, Wanda Krachelska, Władysław Bartoszewski, and others who saved Jews from extermination. I recall Irena Sendler, head of the children's section of the Żegota Council for Aid to Jews, and Sister Matilda Getter, who saved thousands of Jewish children from death. Stand up to the roll call. Glory to the heroes. I call on the members of the Bern Group, Aleksander Ładoś, Konstanty Rokicki, and their associates, Chaim Ace and other activists, who saved thousands of European Jews from mass deportation to German extermination camps. I call on Henryk Sławik, Tadeusz Romer, Jan Żabiński and his wife Antonina, and many other Poles who brought aid to the Jewish population persecuted by the Germans. Stand up to the roll call. Glory to the heroes. I call on Jan Karski and Cavalry Captain Witold Pilecki, who documented the crimes of the Holocaust and passed that knowledge to the world. I call on Shmuel Zygielbojm, organizer of the Jewish resistance movement, member of the National Council of the Republic of Poland in London, who in May 1943, after the fall of the Ghetto Uprising, committed suicide in protest against the inaction of the Allies in the face of the genocide of the Jews. Stand up to the roll call. Glory to the heroes. I call on the Poles murdered in public executions, during village pacifications and a series of retaliatory actions for helping the Jewish population, and among them the Polish families, victims of bestial murders, the Ulma family from Markowa, the Baranek family from Siedliska, and the victims of the massacres in Ciepielów and Rekówka. The Kowalski, Kosior, Obuchiewicz, and Skoczylas families, and many other families. Stand up to the roll call. They died a martyr's death. I call on all Poles, counted by Jerusalem's Yad Vashem Institute, among the righteous among the nations, and decorated with a medal bearing the eloquent phrase, "Whoever saves one life, saves the whole world." Stand up to the roll call. Glory to the heroes. I call on the Poles and Jews, citizens of the Republic of Poland and other countries, murdered during World War II, victims of the Holocaust from the German extermination camps in Auschwitz-Birkenau, Bełżec, Sobibór, Treblinka, Majdanek, Chełmna upon Ner, the concentration camps in Stutthof and Gross-Rosen, and other sites of Jewish slaughter from all over Europe. Murdered during mass executions, in ghettos and forced labor camps, in Łódź and Częstochowa, Białystok, Płaszów, Będzin, Sosnowiec, Dąbrowa Górnicza, Sandomierz, Jasło, Janowski Camp in Lviv, Ponary in Vilnius, Gnidów near Łódzk, Baranowice, and in other places scattered throughout Europe. Victims of the Katyń massacre, Jews, murdered by the NKVD in 1914 in Katyń, among them Rabbi Baruch Steinberg, and all others murdered in the East. Stand up to the roll call. They died a martyr's death. I call on the Jewish soldiers of the Polish armed forces who fought from the first to the last day of World War II. I call on Jewish soldiers from partisan units and various armed formations of the Polish independence underground, including participants in the Warsaw Uprising. I call on Polish soldiers from the armed units of the Polish underground state who gave aid to the fighting ghetto fighters and fell in the uneven fight against the German occupier. Stand up to the roll call. Fallen on the field of glory. I call on all Jews, fallen throughout history, participants in the struggle for the freedom of the Republic of Poland, participants in uprisings and patriotic manifestations, and among them, Berek Joselewicz, colonel of the Polish armed forces, who fell in a skirmish with the Austrians near Kock in 1809. Michał Landy, a high school student, killed by Russian soldiers during a patriotic demonstration on April 8, 1861, in the Castle Square in Warsaw. Stand up to the roll call. Honor their memory. I address you, participants of today's ceremony, those nurturing the memory of the Polish and Jewish victims of World War II. May the memory of the victims of the crime of the Holocaust for all time be a warning to all mankind. Poland remembers all those who made the supreme sacrifice, the sacrifice of blood and life in defense of dignity, humanity, and freedom. May the characters and heroic deeds of our ancestors remain forever in the consciousness of the contemporary and future generations. Glory to the heroes. honor their memory.
Salwa honorowa.
Honorary salute.
Szanowni Państwo,
Ladies and gentlemen, now the central ceremony of laying wreaths of flowers at the feet of the monument to the Warsaw Ghetto Heroes will take place. Flowers will be laid by the representative of the survivors, the witnesses of the Holocaust, the President of the Republic of Poland, the President of the State of Israel, the President of the Republic Federal of Germany, Madam Speaker of the Sejm of the Polish Parliament, Mr. Speaker of the Senate of the Republic of Poland, the President of the Council of Ministers, the Mayor of the City of Warsaw, accompanied by representatives of the institutes which nurture and uphold the memory of the Warsaw Uprising, the Museum of the Warsaw Ghetto, the Museum of the History of Polish Jews, and the Social and Cultural Society of Jews in Poland, as well as the Jewish Historical Institute.
Bardzo proszę o zajęcie miejsc za wieńcami.
I invite the persons assigned to the wreath-laying ceremony to stand behind the wreaths.
Szanowni Państwo,
Ladies and gentlemen, now the military guard of honor will retreat together with the color parties.
Szanowni Państwo,
Ladies and gentlemen, in a moment the commander of the Warsaw Garrison, General Tomasz Dominikowski, will report the closure of our commemoration ceremony.
Szanowni Państwo,
Ladies and gentlemen, the central commemoration ceremony of the 80th anniversary of the outbreak of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising are coming to their close. Would you please remain in your seats? The presidents will leave the square in a moment.
Dobra, chodźcie.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are kindly invited and requested to leave your interpretation headsets on your seats.